past my kickstand for now. This is it. It's from the white poles down there all the way to the white poles here. That's about 275 feet of frontage, and then it goes back almost 800 feet to the tree line that you can just make out on the horizon. Good morning. Hello. There's a couple horses right over there. This is the property across the street from our property. And this is, I want to say, like 15 or 20 acres. And it's just these horses in their barns all the way on the other side of the property. Hey everybody, welcome back to Reachin Reverie. Today is day 2 of Josh and I officially being landowners. And today I wanted to show you guys around our 5 acres while it's a relatively blank slate, and show y'all our goals and our plans for this property. So yesterday this was completely raw land. Doesn't have any structures on this property. And we went to the title company yesterday, and our appointment was at 11, and we officially closed on this property, and we hit the ground running. I didn't even grab my camera yesterday. I completely forgot. I was so excited. Josh and I ran out here and we immediately got to work. And so for day 1, we actually got the start of a road cutout. So we still have a little bit of cleanup to do on the road. We still need to throw down some commercial base gravel. But at this time, I mean, you can see it. We have the road goes in and curves around and goes down about halfway through the property, and we're gonna walk that here in a minute. In the front, eventually we are gonna clear out the brush that is dead and probably thin out some of the mesquite saplings, these bright green plants, and this is going to be where we have our fruit trees. I am just taken away by how quiet it is out here. You can hear birds chirping, and look at the mountain views. It's just so quiet. Wonder if y'all can hear the wind. It is a little bit windy this morning. We had some sprinkling showers right when I pulled up onto the property, and that has since cleared. It looks like they are rolling away now, but I've been here about 20 minutes so far. My close friend Jean and her mom actually just left. They came out here and we got a little bit of a walkthrough before I got to show you guys. So I got here right at sunup this morning, and it was just so quiet, so beautiful and peaceful. So right now I'm just gonna walk down this road that Josh cut yesterday and show you guys a little bit of what we've got going on. He was digging up brush and some trees using his tractor, and he also got a shovel out and was plucking out prickly pear cactus that were all through here so that we could have a place that we could drive onto the property. And just now, I mean, just since yesterday, you can see deer tracks. I'm also seeing little tiny tracks, looks like rabbits. Yesterday, I walked to the back of the property and I put no trespassing signs, and I actually saw what I think are bobcat tracks on the property. But we definitely have javelinas. There's definitely coyotes. We also in our area have black bear and occasionally mountain lions as well as potential visitors. We are going to try to keep as many trees as possible on the property. These are mesquite, which do create bean pods, which are edible. I do plan on foraging for dried mesquite pods to make a gluten-free flour, and the fresh green pods can also be eaten as well. And other things that we can forage for on the property are things such as this native agarita. It looks a lot like a holly, and these red berries are edible. And I plan on harvesting as many of these as I can and making things like jam, but they're also great for fresh eating. I actually saved a lot of agarita seeds for my sister's property in Austin, knowing that I wanted to start some agarita plants once we got our property. And I am so pleased to find that we already have several of these established fruiting plants already growing on the property. They do like to grow in the shade of other large established trees, and so we have these scattered underneath a lot or most of our mature mesquite trees on the property, which is kind of nice. So on this 5 acres, it may look kind of desertified, but this is actually prime property out here where we live. I live in the Chihuahuan Desert of far western Texas, and this is what we would call a high desert, being at an elevation of around 4,500 feet. The mountains are well over a mile high above sea level, and these native plants are actually doing really well, and there's a lot more life in this area than it looks like. The fact that there's so many mesquite trees and the fact that they're doing really well indicates to us that there should be water pretty closely available underground. We did get a quote on wells in this area, and this is one of the shallower areas for a well in our area that we live in. So if we did want to build a well in the future, we shouldn't have too much of a problem getting one dug. Past the orchard at the front of the property, I am planning on building my garden in this region a little bit closer back to the property line. It is going to be a 40-foot wide by 115-foot long square with some raised garden beds in the middle, and I will show you guys a little bit of a map towards the end of this video. So digging out all of the trees in this path and cactus was an all-day endeavor that Josh did yesterday. You know, he got out here around noon and worked until about 8 o'clock last night clearing this road, and I just can't even fathom how he did it. It was up to about 101 yesterday, and I tap out pretty early when it's hot. I stayed out here for about an hour in the heat of the day with him, and I went and actually took shelter under air conditioning yesterday during the heat of the day, and went back out around 5 and stayed with him until 8, helping him. But he largely did most of the work out here yesterday. He was raised down in Terlingua, Texas, south of here, and Terlingua averages about 15 degrees hotter than where we are every day. So a day like yesterday at 101 would have been easily 115 down there. And Terlinguinians, they are tough folk. I mean, they will get out and work all day through heat like that, no problem. So when I was seeking shelter and air conditioning, he was thinking, it's not really that hot out here, is it? And I don't know how he did it, but he just worked right through the heat of the day all day yesterday. Drank lots of water, stayed hydrated, but that just takes my breath away. I'm looking at all of the work that he did just having this property for less than 24 hours. I feel like we're already making some headway getting onto the property. At this time, I mean, I'm still parking out on the street because I don't want to pop tires coming onto the property. These mesquite trees that we largely were taking out of the road path have massive massive thorns on them. I'll find one and show you guys. But mesquite are tire shredders. Like, they will pop your tires and you'll be left stranded. What I'm gonna do after this video is I'm gonna get a big landscape rake and I'm gonna rake through this road that he's cut and try to get as many little fallen mesquite branches out of the road as possible to try to avoid getting our tires poked. But this area is just gorgeous and it is full of life, full of diversity. There are so many different native plants already established on this property. One thing about Texas is a lot of the plants here are very defensive and everything has a way of protecting itself, usually by being thorny. So like, look at this. This looks like all thorn. It literally has these spines, and on the spines there is vegetation. Y'all saw the agarita that I love at the front of the property that looks like a holly bush. That's really pokey. And of course we have prickly pear. This is a pile of prickly pear that we actually dug up to make the road, and you can see there are piles aligning the road the whole way of this property. And there's another pile over there. So we are getting rid of a lot of prickly pear cactus. You can see walking just straight out off of our cut road, and we have a whole prickly pear field going on right there. Oh look, it's a little agarita. Yes, so excited. Still discovering new things every day at this property. Now agarita, I believe it takes a few years before it blooms, so it's really good that we already have some established here on the property. I'm gonna tell Josh, I'm gonna have to flag it and say, leave my little agarita. We can get rid of some of these little mesquites, but leave the agarita. Man, after yesterday, today feels perfect. It was sprinkling. Feels like it's probably in the upper 70s right now. I mean, whew, if it could stay like this all day today, that would be perfect. So the front of the property being there where we came in on, and at the curve, it comes straight back. We were planning on going all the way back to where our pasture is going to be at the end of the property. But of course, we weren't really allowed to walk this property. We were not allowed to walk this property until the sale was closed and funded. And so we had only been feet on the ground in this property one time before we had it ours. And that was the initial time we walked it before we put an offer on the property. So most of our planning for structures and where we were going to build things was using Google Maps. I was able to, they have like a mapping feature where you can measure distance, and we were able to estimate distance from the pole. So we had already kind of planned out our property, and then getting here yesterday, feet on the ground, walking the property, we did make some adjustments because we want to try to keep like mature trees that take years to grow. Here, out here where we live, that mesquite is a mature tree. I know some regions y'all guys are gonna laugh because that tree's only like 15 feet tall. But that's a mature tree on our property. So we actually curved the road around. There's some mature trees right here. We were planning on going right through where those two trees are and having our road cut next to the easement for that power pole. And we were gonna have a circle drive that looped back in here. We're actually, because of those trees, we're gonna swing around and go on the other side of the pole and come back around so we can leave those trees intact on the property. We want to keep as much native plant life and wildlife around as possible. I would love to manage for native diversity. Of course, a road is a must. We have to be able to get onto the property, and we have to be able to reach our facilities on the property. So unfortunately, the smaller things in the path of the road are casualties to our ownership of this property. I do have a couple of flags over here just off the road, and this flag is going to be the closest corner of our RV shade structure. And then we have another flag at the base of that large cholla. And this is going to be the far edge of the RV structure. Josh does own a fifth wheel that he's had for around a decade or a little more, and we are going to place it here under a shade structure that he's going to build. He is already in the works of gathering the material for building that himself, and then we are also getting lined up to get the metal for the roofing on that shade structure as well. That's going to be one of the first things that we complete here on the property. So it's 40 feet wide, and then it's going to be about 20 feet deep. It's going to go. We are planning on doing a small, like, fenced in dog yard on the other side of that, which we're going to try to keep these two mesquite trees within that to be some shade for Evie. And then we'll clear that area out for her because, you know, with her broken leg, we don't really want her to be stepping on all the pokey things that are out to get us here on the property. Past this flag at the edge of the RV, we are planning on building a shop. We're probably going to have 10 to 15 feet between the shop and the RV, so we may clean this cholla up a little bit, get rid of the snake hazard underneath, and maybe just leave the growth on top because this is a very established plant. We'd like to keep it, but this may be in between the RV and the shop. We are planning on building a shop, which is going to be 16 by 24 in this area, with that being the far corner of the shop and coming out probably about here, and it'll go 24 feet back. We are thinking about pushing this flag back probably about 15 feet, maybe starting the structure around that mesquite bush, coming out to here and then going back 24 feet. And then Josh is also planning on having probably a 20-foot by 24-foot slab with a covered, like, carport awning essentially, for him to be able to work outside of his shop. So the road is going to go around this area, and it's going to circle through over here. And it's going to go around our power pole, and then it's going to go on the far side of the shop and the RV, and then it's going to join back in to the road. Now, Josh is a professional driver, delivery driver, so that's the type of things that he does. He works for our local hardware store, and he delivers all the way as far as Fort Stockton to the north, Van Horn to the west, Terlingua to the south, and he also delivers out into Presidio and Candelaria, which is pretty far reaches for deliveries. And so Terlingua, for example, is an area where a lot of people live miles off grid, like where it takes an hour driving down a dirt road to even get to the property. And so he was adamant that coming onto this property, he would have an area where he can pull his big freight truck and get turned around and safely be able to access and leave the property. It was a big deal. So we are gonna have a really nice circle drive that will cut back around for him to be able to get in and deliver material and head out. Now, with us starting day 2, he actually is working until 1 today, so I'm pulling the morning shift here. We are gonna pick up, we kind of ended the road right here, and today I'm gonna get to plucking cactuses, and we're gonna probably with the shovel just pluck out as many of these cactuses in the road path as I can, and then when he gets off, he'll man the tractor and come back and backfill the holes that we have from pulling up plants, and then kind of tag team it and try to get more of this road dug. Now, while I'm standing here, you may have noticed this looks kind of like a trail, right? This is a game trail, and we currently, it looks like that's right there, maybe a raccoon print. We currently have quite a bit of wildlife activity here on the property. This property's been owned by the prior owner for 10 years. He didn't do anything with it in those 10 years, so we have this raw land that has just been essentially a wildlife corridor and just doing its own thing, living its best life for the past 10 years. So I'm really confident that when we do get started with our garden, we can do so organically from the start without really having to worry about chemicals or pesticides or herbicides, because this land has been untouched for so long. With it being untouched, there is that concern. I saw a bobcat print yesterday, seeing raccoon prints, seeing foxes, all kinds of things. I know we have our chickens. Man, we are going to try to keep as many of our prickly pears as we can. Cactus is actually edible. We love the cactus fruit. Those prickly pear fruits are delicious. And you know, it's a great erosion control out here to have cactus. And then of course it does provide a habitat for smaller wildlife to live as well. So of course we're going to take out what's necessary, but even though they're pokey, it's okay to be defensive. It's a hard place to live in West Texas. So we are going to go ahead and try to keep as many of these as we can. If y'all guys see me looking off to the side as I'm recording myself, I am keeping my eyes open. I mean, this has been wild for the past 10 years and already seeing quite a bit of wildlife. And I know javelinas, even though they look like small pigs, are kind of dangerous. We've had somebody up in the town a little bit north of us got gored walking her dog by the tusks of a javelina just a couple years ago. Look at that, some kind of hole, spider hole. We do also have tarantulas out here, which I actually really like tarantulas. They're kind of cool. You can typically see them in the fall traveling, and they also are often seen in roads or on hiking trails, and they like to come out and walk around before it rains. And then we have these huge ants. You can see this is a big ant mound. Right there, that's the entrance to the ant mound. And these ants are huge. And they pack a big bite. I've been bit by one once, and now I know not to stand in one place too long for risk that they may crawl up your leg and bite you. But in general, you know, not really too afraid of being out here, because if you don't hurt them, typically nature will also respect you a little bit too if you don't get in its way. This coming Tuesday, we do have an appointment for an electrical engineer to come in, and we are going to be getting a transformer added to this pole so that we can have electric run. And they're going to get it set up for us, and Josh is going to build the electrical box meter, and he's going to do all of the electrical ourselves here on the property. And my friends, this electric pole roughly marks about the halfway point of the property. So turning to continue on, you can just see the pine trees on the corner. That is the far end of our property. We do meet up against a back fence, and then there's a railroad track easement, and then the property across the railroad tracks has all of those pine trees right there. We do plan on building a pasture on the back of the property, which will house a couple of dairy goats. We're planning on keeping a kind of small operation for dairy, and I would like to have maybe 2 or 3 does that we can keep in milk or cycle in milk. And then we plan on obviously having babies so that we can have milk, because goats won't produce milk without giving birth. And likelihood is, you know, being as sustainable as we can, we will probably keep the wethers or the males as meat, and then we'll probably either keep the females for milk or potentially sell them as doelings for other people in the community that would like to raise their own dairy animals. Well, hello. Hello. I really like this section of the property over here, as it is like already kind of a nice pasture, grassland area. Look at that. Wild native grasses. I do think that once we get an area established for the goat pasture, we will go ahead and start seeding with pasture forage and try to get the pasture built up. We're planning on doing dairy goats, but a lot of this is going to be done in steps, baby steps. So priorities, we need utilities on the property. We're going to get electric, we're going to get septic, and then we also need water. We're going to plan on starting by doing rainwater catchment, probably hauling water until we can get our tanks filled for the first time, and we're going to use roofing structures on the property to collect water, such as the RV cover. The shop are going to collect water for us. I didn't even mention our house. Yeah, we're building a house too. It feels so far away because we have so many things to take care of first. But yes, you can see that power pole. So we have the RV structure and the shop on that end. The house is going to be on this side, where you have that circle drive. Just on this side, closer to us of that circle drive, we're going to have the carport and the house. The house is going to be a 40 by 40. We already have the blueprint drawn up, but of course things take time. So we do again plan on living in that RV while we're building the house, having the shop as additional living space for us, as we will need some storage and an area that we can kick back and relax after a long, hard day's work. So the house is gonna go just right in here probably. Then we're gonna, just on the other side of the house, have this nice little pasture land. And then I feel like the pasture is probably gonna start right at this thicket and go the length of the property. And of course, we're still gonna have that fire line going around the perimeter. We do plan on having a fire line, or essentially a small pathway cut out and clearing all debris for probably 8 feet around the whole perimeter of the property. And we're actually planning on using that as like a little walking track. And that is going to help prevent wildfires in our area from hopefully coming onto the property. One safety measure, of course, it's a compound effort with multiple factors involved, as you know, it's pretty high wind out here. So even with the fire line, we would need to try to do some managing practices to try to be safe. But as you can see, there's like a little mesquite sapling right up next to the fence. Anything touching the fence is gonna go. And we are planning on replacing this perimeter fence. This 4-strand wire is not gonna do it for us very long. One, I mean, you see all the game trails coming through, but two, as we were pulling up to this property yesterday when we bought it, as we were pulling up to the property, we saw somebody on our property, and they had about 5 loose dogs with them. And so we pulled over and introduced ourselves, and he apparently crosses through this property quite often. And so we kindly mentioned that we just bought the property and we're going to be out here more. But yeah, so after this being pretty vacant for 10 years, it kind of has become a wildlife and human corridor. So we are planning on building an 8-foot game fence around the whole property for a couple of reasons. We'd like to keep things off the property that can introduce pests, disease, parasites to our animals, and we also would like to keep it private from two-legged people as well. I think that having the 8-foot fence will help keep things like deer out of the property from getting into the garden. Another thing, which I don't think that we can keep rabbits out, but we are also planning on having meat rabbits. And I have seen several very, very large black-tailed jackrabbits on the property. I mean, these things are huge. They're like the size of a beagle, and that's not an exaggeration. They're huge rabbits. But I am slightly concerned that there is a hemorrhagic disease in rabbits. It's an illness that's highly contagious, and I've heard, at least as far as 15 miles from us, there are rabbits that have this in the wild. So with us wanting meat rabbits, it is a slight biohazard concern that there are so many black-tailed jackrabbits on the property. But we're gonna kind of take it one project at a time, and I'm really excited about our future here. Oh, look at this cholla. He's still trying. Looks like he's dying back up top. He's still trying. We're almost at the back of the property now. You can actually see that little sign right there. There's a little sign that says private property, no trespassing. Well, my friends, I'm gonna get to work before it gets too hot. I think we're expecting it to get up to 97 today. So to try to beat the heat, I'm gonna try to pop out as many of those cactus in the path of our road as we can before the heat of the day. And then when Josh gets off today, he'll probably take over for the afternoon shift. And we'll have to keep you guys updated with our progress on this new land of ours. Did want to show you guys, I was able to find a mesquite, which wasn't very hard, with some of those long thorns. Look at this. That's 3 finger widths, and I have pretty large hands for a girl. Look at that. So I got here at 7 this morning and it was beautiful and sprinkling, and now it is 10 and the sun is out, but it's also still pretty windy, so it doesn't feel too hot yet. And about 3 hours in, I probably spent the first hour and a half walking the property. I had my friend come over and we did a tour, and then of course I recorded the first part of this video. So for about the past, I guess it would be about an hour and a half now, I have been shoveling. And I started on the other side of this tree back in there, and I started popping out cactuses so that we could have Josh, when he gets off work, use his tractor to cut the road like we have at the front back here as we're going around. And I've made it, I cleared out all in here, all the way back to there. And you don't think that it's a lot. And honestly, cactuses, I'm gonna bring my shovel and show you guys. Cactuses are not hard to pop out because they have really shallow roots. Like you could see here that essentially you just like scrape the ground and scrape them out. But I have this pile over here that I started today. We've got this pile right there. And then this pile over here that I'm starting. So next I'm gonna start on this, and then I'm gonna start clearing out that way because the road's gonna curve right here. We're gonna try to leave as many as we can. Like, I really like this little guy. I don't know why. He's just so pretty and healthy. We're gonna leave him. And I'll probably leave the ones over there for now because they're not gonna impact the road. But as I was digging, I thought it was kind of interesting that something else has been out here digging. That's not me. And it's right next to that game trail right here. And then I've also all morning saw a jackrabbit that's been hanging out in the thicket over there on the neighbor's property. And I did have a little bit of excitement a little while ago. I was out here, you know, back to the front of the property, just shoveling away, working hard. And I turned around and, like, coming around that bin were two officers from the sheriff's department, and they were so sweet. They came and introduced themselves and said hi, and they said that somebody had called in and reported my car being parked out on the street, and they were concerned because they thought it had been there since yesterday. Now, we were out here for a large portion of yesterday, and then I did come back here right around sunup, so it probably did appear that my car was abandoned. And I don't know, I actually appreciated them checking in because it felt like, you know, they cared enough to see what was going on in our community. So it's kind of nice to know that even though our nearest neighbor is on the 10 acres over there, we have 4 acres vacant right here, and then there's a neighbor over there that we still have people keeping an eye on what's going on out here. So that actually was encouraging. So I said hi, asked him if it was okay to have my car parked on the road, because right now, as you could see, we're still trying to get rid of the pokey things, and I didn't want to pop my tires, and they were super nice. They said, yeah, that's fine. We just wanted to make sure all was good. I know we do have a lot of activity through here of drug trafficking and illegal immigration. So I don't know what was going on. Maybe they thought there was mischief up here. I know I had mentioned that we did have a person crossing through the property yesterday, trespassing. So I thought that was really nice that they noticed. So that's my little update. It's about 10 o'clock right now on the dot, and I've got about 3 hours until Josh gets off work and he joins me. So let's see how far I can get before and surprise him. Ooh, the cactus are fighting back. So this is a rough drawing of our plan to build on the property, and this is to scale north to south, but over here the property does extend out. It's like this. So this does cut off a little bit in the picture when I printed it out, but this line coming through is going to be our power line, and we have a pole right here, and then there's a pole on the neighbor's property, and we have our gate. And we yesterday, day 1, cut a road up to about here. We are long-term planning to extend the road to the pasture and then go the length of the pasture. We are also planning to cut a fire line around the perimeter of the entire property. We do get grass fires and brush fires out here. It is common and they can be devastating. So we are going to cut a fire line around the perimeter of the property to help reduce the risk of fire. You can see up at the front of the property is our plan to add a orchard. We're planning on adding all different kinds of fruit trees. We're hoping that these trees essentially will catch the water that comes onto the property. Our appraiser says we're not in a flood zone, but when we got our property closed yesterday at the title company, they were mentioning that they did think that we were in a flood zone. So with that conflicting information, we just thought that it would be nice to add some trees to help catch any water that comes onto the property. It would help slow down the flow as that creek overflows off into the property. I do have a square in this section right here. That is the plan to be the garden that I'm going to have. It will be a 40-foot wide by 115 feet long, and we will have probably 6 32-foot by 4-foot raised garden beds, and then a couple of probably 15 by 4-foot beds, and then an area in the middle. We're gonna plan to have like a seating area, maybe a picnic table with an umbrella, maybe eventually adding a gazebo, but that's kind of the idea for that garden area. I do eventually also plan to put maybe a greenhouse and have a cottage garden in between here and the garden for us. This back of the property is going to be a pasture. We're planning to do dairy goats, and we will have it sectioned off into areas where we can rotationally move our stock. Up here we're gonna have our RV structure and then maybe a carport. The RV structure is going to be a 40 by 20. And then next to it, we're planning to build a shop and then have a large covered slab eventually. And this is going to be Josh's work zone. He is very good at mechanics, and you know, he is the jack of all trade. He can build things. He's probably going to have some area for some woodworking, and this is going to be his main base right there. Across from the power line, we are planning on having, this is a carport. This is going to be our house, where we drew in our little wraparound porch right there. And then the corner is going to be like our mudroom, laundry room area. And so that is going to be the rough plan. And you can see we roughly drew out some distances as we have to have a certain amount of feet from the power to the structures, and then everything in between. So our plan this week is working on the road, and then we are getting the materials for the RV structure. That's going to be next. And our future plan very, very, very soon is going to also be to put in septic. So now I'm going to close out this video, and I'll catch y'all on the next one.